Up until now, we've been using a graph display. But if you asked your students to record this information in a lab manual or a piece of paper, you would expect them to record it in a table, right? So let's open up a table display by pushing the F2 key. Now we've got a two-column table, I should say, and in the first column we have pH, and in the second column we have nothing, it's undefined. What we want to see in that column is the chemical name. So we are going to turn on our hotspots. Just like the graph display, the table display has hotspots that you can use to change out measurement names or units and the run number. And just like the graph display, you turn on those hotspots by pushing a check mark. So push it to turn on the hotspots and use the arrow key to move over to that second column heading and push the check mark to open up our data sources. And there you see item number 2 there is the chemical name that we define when we set up for manual sampling. So push the check mark to select it. Okay, we are now ready to collect data. So take your probe, put it into your first sample, and push the start-stop button. And just like we promised, the xploer GLX is waiting for you to tell it to record a data point. How do you tell it that? Okay, take a look at the top bar. You see that flashing flag? That is the indicator that we are in manual sampling mode. But it is also a hint for you about how you're going to tell the xploer GLX to record a point. You actually get to use that flag button finally. Push it, and we've recorded a data point, and now the xploer GLX is asking us what we want to associate, what chemical we want to associate with that. So we will type in juice. This is cranberry juice. So it's actually cranberry raspberry juice. We're just going to type in juice. Oh, okay. What you need to know, see that F3 button right there? That lets us turn off the number locks. So let's do that and try this again. J. U. I. And when we're done, you push F1 for OK. Do we want to treat this column as text data? Yes, we do. F1 or for OK. And there's our first point, and we're ready to move on to the next point. Okay, put it in our next sample there. Give it a second to get used to it. And push the flag button to record the data point, and this is water. And for the sake of keeping things moving along, I will call it H2O. So H, and I'll turn on the num lock to get to the 2. Turn it off again, and O. Okay. Next. Aren't you glad we only have 3 samples? Put it in there. Hit the flag button. And this is an antacid. A. N. Where's the T? A. C. Okay. We are now done with data collection, and at the end of data collection, you push the start-stop button. Now we know the pH of each of our chemicals, so we can classify each of them as an acid or a base. To do that, we need to add a third column to our table, and there are a couple ways we can do that, but the easiest way is to go to your edit menu by pushing the F3 button. Item number 1 on there is new data column. Let's go ahead and push the check mark to select it. And now we have a third data column labeled data column 2, it's editable data column. We want to give it a different name. We don't want it to be called data 2. We want it to call it classification so we can classify our chemicals. Turn on the hotspots so that we can change out the name of that column heading. Push the check mark to select it, and you see item number 5 there, data properties. That lets us change the data properties for the item that we have selected. Measurement name is not data 2. We're going to call it classification, or abbreviated, we'll just call it class. Okay. All right. Now we can actually type in acid or base, except for you can't. Because you see that dashed box? That is a navigation box, which means we can navigate using the arrow keys to existing editable cells, but you can't edit with it. When you're ready to edit a cell, you push the F2 button, which is the Edit Cell button. Now we've got a solid rectangular box with a flashing cursor in it. This is called the editing box. Isn't it nice how that works out? We can actually now type in text. Did you try it? You get numbers again. Okay. Let's turn off the number lock by going to the Edit menu, F3, and item number 4 there selected. It's a check mark. Let's select it to uncheck it. And now we are ready to type in text. So we will call juice at a pH of 2.4 and acid. Okay, and push the check mark to move the next down to the next cell, and we see treat this column as text data. Let me point one thing out to you real quickly. You see that padlock with the number 9 there? That indicates that this editable data column is meant for numerical data. As soon as we say OK to this screen where it asks us if we want this to be text data, watch what happens to that padlock. There it goes, it's gone. Okay, now we can call this 6.1. That is pretty close to a neutral, so we will call it neutral. In U, or E, excuse me, U, T, and check mark to move that box down. And at 7.1, our antacid is also neutral. There. And L. And push the check mark. Make sure after the last one that you do push the check mark to accept that. And now we've got an editing box. Just so you know, if you want to ever change that back to a navigating box, you can do that by pushing the escape key. So quick review, to make it an editing box, you push F2. To make it a navigating box, you push the escape key. Didn't I tell you there was a lot of good stuff in this activity? But there is one more thing I want to show you. Let's go back out to the home screen. And from here, let's go to a graph display. Now you see you've got a graph of pH versus time. You can actually see how much time your students are messing around between samples. But that's not the cool thing I wanted to show you. Let's go to our hotspots by pushing the check mark. And go to your x-axis measurement time. Push the check mark to select it. And select item 2, our chemical measurement there. And I'm going to move the origin a little bit, and I actually show you how to do this in another activity, so you're not missing anything by not following along this time. Take a look at our graph now. You see that we actually have a visual representation of the relative differences between pH of each of our samples, which is very nice for your visual learners. I told you a lot of great stuff in this activity. So now that you have all the tools, go ahead and try it out.